Have you ever stopped to wonder why, in all of human history, with all the magnificent titles available to describe the divine, Almighty, King of Kings, Lord of Hosts, Creator of the universe, Jesus chose one simple, intimate word that would echo through the centuries? Why Father? What was he really trying to tell us when he used this particular word? And more importantly, what does it reveal about the very nature of your existence right now, in this moment? Most people have heard this word, spoken in churches, prayers, and religious gatherings thousands upon thousands of times. It's become so familiar that it's almost lost its meaning. Like a song you've heard so often you no longer really listen to the lyrics. But what if I told you that hidden within this single word lies a truth so transformative, so radical, that once you truly grasp it, your entire understanding of who you are and your relationship with the divine will shift in ways you never imagined possible? Think about your own experience for a moment. Has this ever happened to you? You find yourself in a situation that feels overwhelming. Maybe it's financial pressure, a health crisis, a broken relationship, or just the weight of life itself, and you turn to prayer. But notice how you pray. Notice the words you use, the posture of your heart. Are you begging? Are you pleading for help from someone far away? Are you hoping that if you say the right words, use the right formula, demonstrate enough faith, that, maybe, just maybe, the divine will turn its attention toward you and decide to intervene? But before we begin diving deeper into this revelation, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos. This is how countless souls have approached the divine for millennia, as supplicants before a distant throne, as beggars hoping for scraps of divine favor, as children standing outside a locked door, knocking desperately and wondering if anyone inside can even hear them. But here's what will shake everything you thought you knew. Jesus never prayed like this. Not once. He approached the divine with a completely different consciousness, a totally different understanding of the relationship between humanity and God. And when he consistently, deliberately, intentionally used the word Father, he wasn't just being poetic or offering a comforting metaphor. He was unveiling something profound about reality itself. Now, what you're about to discover might completely transform not just how you understand prayer, but how you see yourself in this vast universe. Because the word Father wasn't describing a relationship you need to earn, achieve, or somehow become worthy of. It was revealing a connection that already exists, that has always existed, that cannot be broken no matter what you've done or failed to do. Stay with me until the end of this exploration, because what Jesus understood about this father-child relationship holds the key to unlocking a dimension of spiritual reality that most people spend their entire lives searching for without ever finding. The question isn't whether God can be your father. The question is, what changes in your life when you finally understand what being a child of the divine actually means? And why Jesus made this the cornerstone of everything he taught. Let me show you something that's been hiding in plain sight all along. Here's what most people miss entirely when they read the accounts of Jesus' life and ministry. He never once approached God the way we've been taught to approach God. Never. Not in moments of crisis. Not when facing impossible situations. Not even when standing before his greatest challenges. There was no begging, no bargaining, no desperate attempts to convince the divine to pay attention or care about what was happening. Instead, there was something else entirely, a quiet, unshakable confidence that revealed he understood something fundamental about the nature of reality that the rest of humanity had somehow forgotten or never fully grasped. When Jesus used the word Father, he wasn't selecting a comforting religious title from a list of acceptable names for the divine. He wasn't trying to make God seem friendlier or more approachable to his followers. This wasn't about public relations or marketing a new spiritual brand. He was pulling back the curtain on a hidden truth that changes absolutely everything about how we understand our existence, our identity, and our connection to the source of all life. This single word was a revelation, a key that unlocks a door most people don't even know exists. The religious institutions throughout history have presented us with a particular image of God, a supreme being sitting on a distant throne somewhere beyond the clouds. occasionally glancing down at human affairs when the mood strikes, perhaps intervening here and there based on criteria we can never quite understand. This God requires our worship, demands our obedience, and might grant our requests if we perform the right rituals, say the right prayers, or demonstrate sufficient faith. But this entire framework misses what Jesus was actually pointing toward. The word Father in his consciousness wasn't describing distance at all. It was describing the most intimate, unbreakable connection imaginable. If you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of our future videos exploring these life-transforming truths. Think about what intimacy actually means. Not the superficial kind we often settle for, but true intimacy. The kind where there's no separation, no gap, no walls between one being and another. Jesus was revealing that the relationship between the divine and humanity isn't like a king and his subjects, isn't like a master and servants, isn't even like a distant parent occasionally checking in on children who live far away. It's something far more radical, far more immediate, far more transformative than any of these comparisons can capture. He was pointing to a reality where the divine isn't somewhere else waiting to be reached. The divine is the very substance, the actual essence, the fundamental nature of what you are right. Now in this moment, this shifts everything. When you begin to see that Father means source and substance rather than distant ruler, your entire spiritual journey transforms. The exhausting effort to somehow bridge the gap between yourself and God suddenly reveals itself as unnecessary because there is no gap. There never was. The separation you've felt, the distance you've tried to overcome through years of prayer and spiritual practice, it was never real. It was a misunderstanding, a false belief that shaped your entire approach to the divine. Now I want to go even deeper into what this actually means for your daily life, because this isn't just beautiful philosophy or inspiring spiritual poetry. This recognition carries practical implications that reach into every corner of your existence. When Jesus operated from this consciousness of God as Father, not as distant deity, but as intimate source, he demonstrated something that most spiritual seekers miss completely. He showed us that divine power isn't something you acquire through worthiness or spiritual achievement. It's something you inherit simply by recognizing the relationship that already exists. Write in the comments, "I'm ready to see this differently," if something in this is beginning to shift your perspective on what's actually possible. Here's where the revelation becomes almost too radical for most religious frameworks to handle, and why many spiritual teachers have soft-pedaled this truth throughout history. You are not a separate creation standing outside the divine, desperately trying to get God's attention, hoping to somehow bridge the gap between your human limitation and divine perfection. That entire framework is built on a misunderstanding of what you actually are. The truth Jesus was pointing to is far more staggering. You are the expression of the divine source itself, living and breathing in human form right here, right now, in this very moment. This isn't a metaphor. This isn't poetic language meant to make you feel better about your spiritual journey. This is a statement about the fundamental nature of reality and your place within it. When Jesus revealed God as Father, he was showing us that the relationship between divine source and human expression operates exactly like the relationship between a parent and child. The child doesn't receive something separate from the parent's nature. The child literally carries the parent's essence, DNA, characteristics flowing through every cell of their being. It's not borrowed. It's not temporarily gifted. It's completely inherited. Think about the implications of this for just a moment. If this is true, if you genuinely are the expression of divine life, rather than something separate from it, then everything you've been taught about spiritual growth, about earning God's favor, about becoming worthy of divine presence, all of it collapses under the weight of this recognition. You're not on a journey toward God. You're awakening to the reality that you've never been separate from your source, not for one single breath, not for one fleeting moment of your existence. This unbreakable connection that Jesus called the Father relationship isn't something you create through years of meditation, prayer, or spiritual discipline. It's not a reward for good behavior or a prize for perfect faith. It existed before you took your first breath. It will continue beyond anything your mind can conceive. There is no gap between source and expression. No distance between the divine and you, no separation whatsoever. The flow moves continuously, eternally, from infinite source into individual form without interruption. Most people spend their entire lives searching for this connection, trying to establish it, desperately working to build a bridge to the divine. But you can't build a bridge to something you're already inside of. You can't create a connection that has always existed. The only thing that changes is your awareness, your recognition, your conscious acknowledgement of what has been true all along. This is the hidden truth behind every genuine spiritual transformation. Not that something new gets added to you, but that something false gets removed from your perception. The impact of truly grasping this shifts your entire mindset from lack to abundance, from separation to unity, from begging to inheriting. When you recognize yourself as divine expression rather than separate creation, every decision you make begins flowing from a different place. You stop operating from fear of not having enough, not being enough, not doing enough. You start operating from the quiet confidence that comes with knowing your true nature. Now let me show you what happens when this recognition moves from intellectual understanding into lived experience, because there's a crucial distinction between knowing about this truth and actually embodying it in your daily life. The transformation doesn't happen in your theology. It happens in your consciousness. And from there it radiates outward into every circumstance, every challenge, every moment of doubt or uncertainty you face. Put down in the comments, "I am divine expression," if this truth is beginning to resonate somewhere deeper than your logical mind. The devastating reality is that every single prayer you've ever prayed from a place of desperation, every moment you felt completely abandoned by the divine, every long night when you wondered if anyone out there was even listening to your cries for help, all of it, every ounce of that suffering, was rooted in one fundamental misunderstanding about who you actually are. This isn't your fault. You were taught to see yourself this way. You inherited a framework that presented you as separate, broken, unworthy, constantly needing to earn divine favor through better behavior, stronger faith, or more sincere repentance. But this entire framework was built on sand. The struggle you've experienced in your spiritual journey isn't because you weren't trying hard enough or because your faith was too weak. The struggle exists because you've been operating from a false premise about the nature of your relationship with the divine. It's like spending years trying to unlock a door that was never actually locked in the first place. The exhaustion, the frustration, the sense of never quite measuring up, these aren't signs of your spiritual inadequacy. They're the natural result of trying to achieve something that already exists, trying to become something you've always been. When Jesus chose the word Father, he was being extraordinarily precise in his language. He wasn't reaching for a warm, fuzzy metaphor to make people feel comfortable. He was pointing to something specific and undeniable: source, origin, and substance. These three elements completely redefine what the relationship between divine and human actually is. A father doesn't loan his DNA to his child temporarily. A father doesn't grant his genetic code as a reward for good behavior. The child carries the father's complete essence, automatically, inherently, from the very moment of existence. If this video brought you clarity or shifted something in how you see yourself and God, then hit that like button. It lets me know this resonated with you and helps others discover these teachings. This is the hidden pattern behind all of reality that transforms everything once you see it. Your connection to the divine isn't like an employee's relationship to their boss, where favor must be earned and positions can be lost. It's not like a subject's relationship to a king, where one wrong move means exile. It's organic, biological, unbreakable. You carry divine nature the same way a child carries their parents' traits, not because you achieved anything, not because you deserved it, but because that's simply what you are made of. The substance of your being is divine substance. The origin of your life is divine life. The source of your existence is the same source that created everything that has ever existed. This shift in understanding doesn't just impact your theology or your religious beliefs. It fundamentally alters your entire approach to every challenge you face, every decision you make, every moment of uncertainty or fear. When you recognize that you're not trying to connect with your source, but rather you're the expression of that source, the whole game changes. You stop begging for things you supposedly lack and start recognizing what you've always possessed. You stop living as an orphan in a hostile universe and start living as an heir in your Father's house. The transformation happens at the level of identity first, and then everything else follows from there. Your circumstances might not change overnight, but how you navigate those circumstances shifts dramatically when you understand what you're actually made of. Write in the comments, "My struggle ends here," if you're beginning to see how this one misunderstanding has shaped everything about your spiritual journey until now. Look at your hands for a moment. The skin, the bones beneath, the blood flowing through your veins. What are these actually made of? Not philosophically, but literally. You're not a creation fashioned from something external to the Creator, like a sculptor working with clay that exists separately from themselves. You are the direct, unfiltered expression of divine Source itself, God's own being, God's own nature, God's own life. This is what actually composes your existence right now, in this very moment. Not metaphorically, not symbolically. Actually, the breath moving through your lungs right now, that's divine breath. The consciousness reading these words, processing this information, experiencing this moment, that's divine consciousness wearing your name and living your specific life. You are what happens when infinite source decides to experience itself. In finite form. This isn't spiritual poetry meant to inspire you. This is a description of reality that completely dismantles the barrier you thought existed between you and the divine. Most people hear this and immediately think it sounds arrogant or blasphemous, which reveals just how deeply the separation mindset has been programmed into our collective consciousness. But here's what breaks open everything you've been taught. When Jesus stood before the religious authorities and declared, "I and my Father are one," he wasn't claiming exclusive rights to divinity. He wasn't setting himself apart from the rest of humanity and establishing a hierarchy where he alone possessed this connection. That's what centuries of religious interpretation have tried to make it mean, because institutions need hierarchy. They need separation. They need levels of worthiness to maintain their power structures. But Jesus was doing the exact opposite. He was revealing what's true about himself, yes, but also about you, about every person who has ever drawn breath, about the fundamental nature of human existence itself. The statement wasn't, "Look how special I am, how different from you." The statement was, "Look at what's true about me, and recognize this same truth exists in you." He was pulling back the curtain on a reality that religious systems have spent 2,000 years trying to obscure, because once people truly grasp this, the entire game changes. The impact of this recognition is almost too profound to put into words. When you understand that your oneness with the divine source isn't something Jesus had that you're trying to achieve, but rather something that describes the fundamental composition of your being right now, your entire approach to life undergoes a massive shift. You stop seeing yourself as inadequate, broken, or separate. You stop measuring your worth by how spiritual you've become or how many religious boxes you've checked. You begin operating from the quiet confidence that comes with knowing what you're actually made of. This changes your decisions. It transforms how you show up in difficult moments. It rewrites the internal narrative that's been running your life, the one that says you're not enough. You don't have enough. You'll never measure up. Because how can you be inadequate when you're made of the same substance as the source of everything? How can you lack anything when infinite supply is your actual nature? The journey isn't about becoming divine. It's about recognizing the divinity that has always been present, hidden beneath layers of false teaching and cultural conditioning. Now, let me show you what happens when this consciousness becomes more than intellectual understanding, when it moves from your head into the very center of how you navigate your actual, practical, everyday life, with all its challenges and complexities. Put down in the comments, "I am one with my source." If this truth is landing somewhere deeper, then your logical mind can fully explain the exhausting spiritual journey you've been on, the endless seeking, the constant striving to become more enlightened, more connected, more worthy. What if all of it was based on chasing something you already possess? Think about the irony for a moment. You've been desperately trying to earn or achieve a connection that has existed since before you took your first breath. This oneness with the divine source isn't a destination you reach after years of meditation retreats, perfect prayer lives, or religious devotion. It's not a reward handed out to those who finally get spiritual enough. It's the foundational reality of your existence right now, in this moment, whether you recognize it or not. You already are what you've been trying to become. You already possess what you've spent your entire life searching for in books, seminars, spiritual practices, and religious rituals. The journey you thought you were on, from separation to unity, from human to divine, from unworthy to accepted. That entire journey is an illusion created by misunderstanding your true nature from the beginning. You're not climbing a ladder toward God. You're waking up to the reality that you've never been anywhere else except in the presence of your source, because you are the presence of your source expressed in individual form. Let me give you a picture that makes this immediately clear, because sometimes our minds need concrete images to grasp abstract, spiritual truths. Imagine standing on a beach watching the waves roll toward the shore. Each wave rises from the ocean, builds crests, crashes onto the sand, and flows back into the water. Now ask yourself this simple question: is that wave separate from the ocean? Is it on a spiritual journey trying to reach the ocean? Is it practicing techniques to become more oceanic? Does it need to earn the right to be considered real water? The absurdity of these questions reveals everything. The wave is already ocean. It has always been ocean. It will always be ocean. It's simply the ocean temporarily expressing itself in wave form. The wave doesn't possess some of the ocean's water, while the rest remains separate. The wave is 100% ocean, just experiencing itself in a particular shape for a brief moment before returning to formlessness. And here's what shifts everything. This is exactly, precisely, your relationship to the divine source. You are not a human being on a spiritual journey trying to reach God. You are God's own life temporarily expressing itself in human form, wearing your name, living your specific story, experiencing this moment through your unique perspective. Just as the wave never stops being ocean for even a fraction of a second, you have never stopped being divine life for even one moment of your existence. The shape changes, the form is temporary, but the substance remains constant. You are ocean pretending to be a wave, infinity pretending to be finite eternal source experiencing itself in time-bound form. This isn't poetry. This is the actual mechanics of reality that Jesus understood and tried to communicate through the word Father. Now, I want to show you what happens when this recognition begins operating in your practical, everyday life. Because this truth isn't meant to remain theoretical. When you start seeing yourself as the wave knows itself to be ocean, everything about how you navigate challenges, make decisions, and respond to life's uncertainties undergoes a fundamental transformation. Write in the comments, "I am the wave that is ocean," if this metaphor just made something click into place for you. There's a profound insight that Smith Wigglesworth uncovered through decades of helping people break free from spiritual struggle. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. He discovered that every single form of suffering, every experience of pain, every moment of feeling limited or lacking, all of it, without exception, traces back to one root cause. Not multiple causes, not a complicated web of issues, but one fundamental error that poisons everything else: the belief in separation. This is the hidden source behind all the anxiety, all the fear, all the desperate striving that characterizes most people's lives. When you genuinely believe you are separate from your source, cut off from the divine, disconnected from infinite supply and wisdom, you automatically live in a state of perpetual tension. You feel you must control outcomes through sheer willpower. You believe survival depends entirely on your limited human resources, your personal cleverness, your ability to manipulate circumstances in your favor. You become like an orphan in a hostile universe, constantly scanning for threats, always worried that the resources you need might run out, perpetually anxious about whether you'll be okay. This isn't just psychological stress. This is the natural consequence of operating from a fundamentally flawed understanding of what you are. The exhausting effort, the sleepless nights, the constant worry about money, health, relationships, future outcomes, all of it flows from this one misperception. You think you're alone, separate, on your own. And when you think you're on your own, you have to carry everything yourself. The weight becomes unbearable because you were never designed to function in isolation from your source. A wave that somehow forgot it was ocean would experience existence as constant terror, wouldn't it? Always afraid of dissolving, always worried about not having enough substance, always anxious about its small, temporary form. But the moment that wave remembers what it actually is, the entire experience transforms even though nothing external changed. This is where most spiritual teaching gets it backwards. They tell you the solution is learning better techniques, memorizing more powerful prayers, following stricter disciplines, adding more spiritual practices to your daily routine. But that's just piling more effort onto a fundamentally flawed foundation. True transformation doesn't happen through acquiring new information or mastering advanced spiritual skills. It happens through recognition, through seeing what has always been true but remained hidden behind layers of false teaching, cultural conditioning, and religious dogma that kept you locked in the separation mindset. The journey you're actually on isn't about becoming something you're not. It's about removing the illusions, the false beliefs, the mistaken identities that have prevented you from recognizing what you've always been. It's like cleaning dirt off a diamond. You're not creating value, you're revealing what was always there. The diamond doesn't become valuable through the cleaning process. It simply becomes visible as what it has always been. This shift from striving to recognition, from earning to inheriting, from achieving to awakening, this is where your entire life experience begins to transform from the inside out. Now, let me show you exactly how this recognition changes your relationship with prayer itself, because once you understand what you actually are in relation to the divine, you can never approach prayer the same way again. Put down in the comments, recognition, not struggle, if you're seeing how this one shift changes everything about your spiritual journey. Watch what happens to your entire prayer life when this understanding of the Father relationship finally penetrates your consciousness. Most people approach prayer with a very specific formula that reveals everything about their underlying belief system. They say something like, "Please God, help me with this problem. I really need your intervention here. Please fix this situation for me." Listen carefully to what that prayer actually communicates beneath the words. It assumes God is somewhere else, that divine help must travel from there to here, that you need to convince or persuade the divine to pay attention to your specific need. It's the prayer of someone operating from separation consciousness, believing the gap between them and their source is real. But when you genuinely grasp what Jesus revealed about this relationship, your entire approach undergoes a radical transformation. You're no longer asking an external being to do something for you. Instead, you're recognizing what's already present, already true, already operating in your life, right? Now, the prayer shifts from "Please come help me" to "I recognize that divine wisdom is here as my true nature." Do you see the profound difference? One is begging for something you believe you lack. The other is acknowledging something you've always possessed but perhaps haven't been conscious of until this moment. This isn't just semantics or playing with words. This is a fundamental shift in consciousness that changes how you experience every challenge, every crisis, every moment of uncertainty. When you recognize that divine intelligence isn't something external you need to acquire, but is actually your inheritance, your true nature, the very substance of your being, you stop approaching problems from a place of lack and start approaching them from a place of fullness. You stop trying to get something and start allowing what's already there to express itself through you naturally. Think about how inheritance actually works in physical reality, because this reveals everything about your relationship with divine resources. When a child is born into a family, they don't inherit their father's resources through worthiness. They don't receive provision because they begged convincingly or proved they deserved it. The inheritance flows to them through one simple, undeniable fact: the relationship itself. They are the child. The father's resources naturally, automatically, inevitably belong to them by the very nature of who they are. Not what they've done, not how good they've been, simply because of the unbreakable bond that existed from the moment of their existence. This is the revolutionary shift that Jesus was revealing when he consistently used the word Father. Divine supply, divine wisdom, divine peace, divine healing. All of it is your inheritance, not your goal. It's not something you're trying to obtain from a reluctant deity who needs to be convinced you deserve help. It's something that already belongs to you, because of who you are as the expression of divine life itself. The entire framework changes from earning to receiving, from striving to recognizing, from begging to claiming what's already yours by nature of your relationship with your source. Now, let me give you something practical you can begin implementing immediately that will start shifting your consciousness from the old pattern of begging to this new awareness of inheriting, because understanding this intellectually is one thing. Living from it daily is where the real transformation happens. Write in the comments, "I claim my inheritance," if you're ready to stop begging and start receiving what already belongs to you. If you've made it this far, if you've stayed with me through this entire exploration of what Jesus really meant when he called God Father, then something in this message resonated with you at a level deeper than casual curiosity. You're not here by accident. This recognition you're experiencing right now, this shift beginning to happen in your consciousness, that's the beginning of something profound. I create content like this because I've seen how these truths actually transform lives when people genuinely grasp them, when the understanding moves from intellectual concept into lived experience. If this video brought you clarity, if it shifted how you see yourself in relation to the divine, then hit that like button. It helps me know this resonated with you, and honestly, it helps more people discover these teachings who might be searching for exactly what you just found. And if you haven't already joined this community, I'd love to have you subscribe. We're exploring these deeper spiritual truths together, going beyond surface-level religion into what actually changes how you experience your daily life. This isn't just about feeling inspired for a moment. It's about discovering realities that fundamentally alter your relationship with everything. Leave a comment saying, "This message was meant for me," if you feel like you were supposed to find this video today. I read every single comment, and I love seeing where you all are on your journey and what's landing in your hearts. There's a video right here that takes this even deeper, showing you exactly how to live from this consciousness in your practical everyday life. Click and continue with me over there, because what you've discovered here is just the beginning of understanding who you really are.